So after spending a week at St. Crispin's, it seems that I forgot where we were at in the Gospel of Mark. And as I told the congregation who gathered for Rite One this morning, indeed I had, because I prepared a sermon for a different text. But as the Spirit so often does, I was reminded of an encounter that I had this week that put Paul's observation in his second letter to the Corinthians, that even though our outer nature is wasting away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day, well, it put that firmly into perspective for me. But perhaps not in the way that you might expect. This passage, I think, surely speaks to the reality that is aging, a journey that many of us are familiar with. But how this concept speaks to a younger generation, say to a 12-year-old, who is just beginning to understand the complexities of life. Well, that often comes in the form of a decisive moment. That was surely the case for a friend I met this week, whose grandmother had just passed away a few days before she came to camp. In the time that we shared on picnic benches and in the pav, as they call it, I heard about her grandmother's slow decline through ALS, to the point at which her grandmother had to use a machine, I think it's called an eye gaze machine, to communicate with her family members. She could look at a keyboard and it would type out a sentence. Her grandmother's outer nature literally wasting away before her eyes, but instead, in the few moments that we had together, she chose to talk mostly about the impact that her grandmother's inner nature had had on her throughout the short time that she had with her. This inner nature, which includes our spirit, our soul, and our character that doesn't, I think, age in the same way that our bodies do, had been so imprinted on my friend's heart that as I was listening to her, I found my faith renewed. She reflected throughout the week on how our inner nature, and this is a 12-year-old, right? On how our inner nature can go stronger and wiser and more beautiful with each passing day, even if it's challenged by disease. Perhaps, she said, even more so. But most of all, she likened it to trees. How trees grow rings as they get older, showing them through its sort of strength how many years it had lived. And I couldn't help but notice that trees often surrounded us as we spoke. In situations like this, camp counselors, they kind of bow out and they're like, this is what you get paid for, so you got that? And so I try to keep them there because I think it's going to be part of their growth too. And I try to reflect on how these moments were given to us as an opportunity to learn more about love and kindness and patience, and that by taking time to tend to one another, we grow closer to God, and we begin, I think, to understand what really matters in life. And she did just that. I think those realizations and those moments is what is truly behind our hearts and our minds becoming renewed each day. Even though our bodies might feel differently, our spirits can become even more vibrant and alive, whether we are 12 or 82. What was true of this encounter, however, was that it wasn't some reflection on the nature of aging itself, as much as it was about how a grandmother turned her aging into saging. I couldn't count how many times I was listening to her and was thinking to myself, if only she could see you now. But then again, can't she? The book of Proverbs tells us gray hair is a crown of glory. I don't know what that means in Steve's case. I love you. I love you. And that it is gained in a righteous life. Did you zoom in on him when I did that? Okay. We had this whole thing planned. What's true, my friends, is that over the years, you know, that we accumulate experiences, lessons, and insights that not only guide our own lives, but that have the potential to help guide the lives of those that we love. This wisdom is, I think, treasure, whether we think it is or not. And as we age, we are called, I think, to share this wisdom generously with our younger friends, even and especially if it's awkward, because it's always going to kind of feel awkward, but just do it. That's what I learned this week. I assure you, it still lands. And by embracing your role as elders, you can, in some cases, without even knowing it, mentor and teach and support those who are just beginning their journey. I saw how it worked over and over and over again. And in a world that sees our young folks struggling to know some measure of peace, there is a gift that you all possess. And that is a gift. That is the gift of the opportunity to help cultivate not only peace, but an intention. How do we cultivate, not just in our lives, but in the lives of those that we love? How do we cultivate the need and the want, I think, on how to reflect? As we grow older, we often gain a clearer perspective on what truly matters. And this is because I think the rush and busyness of our earlier life gives way to a more reflective and contemplative approach. And some of that is missing, profoundly missing in today's culture. But what happens when we do cultivate that in our lives is something profound, in that it reveals sort of like our growing relationship with God in a new and profound way. The psalmist writes that even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. And this is a promise that reminds us that God is ever present with us, providing us strength and peace as we age. And I think our young kids need to hear that message too. They need this gift of peace, and what is more, a willingness for us to help them learn it. The truth is that with each passing year, we have more opportunities to witness to God's faithfulness and grace in our lives. And the trials and the challenges that we face can, and most often do, strengthen us, whether we like to admit it or not. Our faith, tested and refined over time, can indeed become a beacon of hope. That's why Paul writes, therefore we do not lose heart. That's why he says that. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are renewed day by day. haven't said her name yet. But Madeline did just this week. She reflected on the love that she knew through her grandmother. She listened deeply to those words of wisdom that she had received at her bedside, that she received in being present for her grandmother's last breath. And in a story and in a moment I haven't really come to terms with, I'd like to end today. Earlier in the week we were speaking, and she told me that one of the reasons why she decided to go to camp this week was that she could participate in activities that her grandmother liked to do. Be out in nature, right? To go on hikes and listen to the cicadas as they would put her to sleep, and in a bird song that would wake her up in the mornings. I learned about her grandmother's deep love for creation and for her love of all things dogs. I learned that most of the time she had spent her retirement years before ALS caught up to her, taking in strays and fostering pups that had no chance of adoption. And so I didn't think it was odd when Madeline's grandmother said to her, "When you need me, look for me in the forest. Find me in the cool waters. Listen for me in the bird song." And this is it. And if it just so happens that you meet a wandering dog, it's me coming to say hello. Wouldn't you know it, that just before we started field games on Wednesday night, a stray healer watched us from the sidelines.